Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and greetings to everyone, and welcome to this evening's episode of the Viberarian Show. My name is Joelle, and I am the Viberarian. My purpose is to elevate, empower, and enlighten you with information that I hope you will find positive and uplifting. Every week we are here on the Viberarian Radio Network on Blog Talk Radio to have a conversation exploring this unknown and mysterious world of ours. There's no subject that we will not cover and no stone that I will leave unturned. You can kind of think of it like a knowledge quest. And I love having these conversations from week to week. We bring on panelists who talk about various subjects that are in their expertise or interest, and you just never know what is going to come out. You can connect with the show this evening on our phone line, which is 646-668-8988. If you're listening on the phone line and something strikes your fancy and you want to call in to contribute to the conversation, just press the 1 key on your phone keypad, and I will get to you as soon as I can in the conversation. I'd also like to invite you to connect with my community. I like to call them the Good Vibe Tribe, and this is on Facebook. You can find the Viberarian, and that is VIBE as in energy, RARIAN. And it is also the same information on Instagram and Twitter at the Viberarian. You can find me on social media. I'm always trying to pass along information that I find out in the world that I think you'll find interesting, that you'll find positive, and that will enlarge your knowledge base. So that might be pictures and random moments caught out in the wild on my Instagram, or posts that are viral on Facebook. So I definitely invite you to tune in to that community, join us, and of course share things that you think would be helpful and uplifting to other people as part of that conversation. We are available this evening. There is a chat room online where you can ask questions during the broadcast. I'm monitoring that as we speak. Excuse me, one moment. Sorry about that. I had something trapped in my throat. So tonight's show is really just a what's the 411 conversation. I'm here to talk about the things that I've heard this week or the last couple of weeks out in the searching that I do in the communities that I'm connected with. This could be everything from astrology, energy happenings, and I, of course, am inviting you to join along and contribute anything that you have that you would like to talk about this evening. Did you hear a rumor? Do you have a question about something you heard and need some further insight? This is the time to call, and we'll get it on tonight. Now, some of you may know, if you've been listening to the show from week to week, that I actually am a librarian. And so I used to work in the corporate environment, helping people find the answers to the questions that they had, and also helping the public. And I've transitioned over into this area of work because I still like helping people find information, but I really enjoy the kinds of people that are connecting through the Viberarian show and as well as my Psychic Inside show. I've always been a bit of a kind of like Indiana Jones and the search for the Temple of Doom and the Ark of the Covenant and the mystery of the Holy Grail. And, of course, I was an X-Files fan for many, many years. So I love examining things that are unique and interesting. And of course, the fact that I get to do this with people who also find it interesting and sometimes a little quirky is really great to me because it's a fun conversation. So this week I'm so excited because we can really talk about any and everything. And I do have a couple callers who called in to contribute to the knowledge of the news and the happenings of the day. So we'll find out who that is. And we'll be on for about the next hour or so talking about what is the 411. So As I said, my name is Joelle, and I know that I am being joined at this particular time on the line. Who am I speaking with on caller 4045?
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. How are you?
This is Marcus. How are you?
Yay! Marcus, thank you for calling this evening. This is Marcus Howell, clairvoyant and author. Marcus lives here in the Atlanta area and has been a guest on several of our radio shows. He was on the Psychic Inside show a few weeks ago, sharing the story of how he discovered and came to work with his psychic gifts and abilities. And he's also been on some of our other Viberarian shows when we've been talking about things like astral travel, dreams, projection, dream symbols, and I don't know, we've been talking online for a couple years now, Marcus, and it's never a dull conversation. So welcome
never,
this
ever.
evening.
Thank you so
How
much.
are you?
I appreciate it. I've been doing good. I've been doing really good. I'm still riding that high from the interview we had a couple weeks ago, and I'm still getting phone calls and still getting appointments and been doing a lot of reading since then. It's been really great.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. You know, I'm a fan and a friend. So, I'm really happy to hear that because I think you're wonderful, too. I've also got on the line with us this evening one of our regular callers and supporters, part of the Good Vibe Tribe, Monica. Are you on the line? Can you hear me?
Sure can. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Monica. Welcome.
Enjoying myself, ready to jump in.
Well, this is great, Monica. You've listened to many of the episodes of the show before, and so I appreciate your support of that. And, of course, you and I often talk offline about some of the topics that we're talking about or going to be talking about this evening. So what I really want to do is find out what kind of energies you're experiencing, what have you read about, what is going on with you. And there's a message to my madness in this. What I am finding is as I start to talk with people individually, they will mention very unique topics, and then I'll talk to someone else a day or two later, and next thing you know, they're saying something very similar to that. And so we're not having as much individual experiences as one might think. So, I would love to just compare notes with people to see what you've heard, because I believe that there are synchronistic messages that we receive that can help us along our journey. And sometimes we don't talk about stuff because we don't know who to talk about it with, especially if it's something that's unusual or kind of what some people would consider on the fringe, if you will. So have either of you had any, really unique conversations that you were like, or read or heard something in the last week or two?
Actually, I have, but I'll let ladies go first.
Oh, no, by all means. Run with it, bruh.
Okay, you want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Well, you know how I am. I'm a big fan of energy, and I see how energy affects everyone. And we're all gifted. We're all different. And a lot of times why you might get the same message from different people is usually because, people are in tune, and whatever's in the universe is supposed to be said is usually what's said. And I've noticed that, lately, my aunt, who also is clairvoyant, lives in London, she mentions all the time how we should kind of, take a break and slow down around the time when Mercury in retrograde comes around.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's usually a reason why some people aren't feeling well doing readings, or sometimes I get headaches doing them, and it's always something, that kind of makes you say, what's going on, and why is it so weird right now, and stuff like that. But I think that all boils around to people, their energy, everybody's in sync, and lately I've been kind of getting a lot of wow moments where things are coming through, and I don't even believe it, and I'm just kind of shocked myself, and then when you see things coming around and it makes a lot of sense. And other people that are gifted are saying the same thing. It's kind of like, wow, that's amazing how that happens. It's kind of like really, really thick energy going on right now.
I absolutely agree. And what I am aware of is the solstice energy. From what I've read and understand and participate in several group meditations and events online, that this was a major energetic portal that is available and affecting us when those major alignments of stellar energies happen, such as the equinox and the solstice. But this particular solstice was supposed to have been very, very big. And so that was on or around, I think, the 19th, 20th, 21st, somewhere around there of June. And so a lot of people were, from what I've read, they're saying that the collective of humanity is going through some energetic shifts, that we were moving out of and have been moving out of a low vibration reality for quite some time, but that there's a massive upgrade that happens. So what may happen is that you will receive changes to your energetic structure and also the things that are bombarding the planet from, say, the space realm as we kind of get into these alignments that may be making people, you might have headaches, you might be fatigued and feel off kilter. Some people I read were expressing that they had ringing in their ears or pressure in their head and crown chakra area, or sudden temperature fluctuations, such as getting very, very hot, very, very cold suddenly. And so this would have been, probably a considerable portion of June, definitely around as we started to turn the bend toward the last half of the month, and that all of this is going to actually be crescendoing through the Lionsgate portal, which is on the 8/8 portal, and then through the solar eclipse on August 21st, which is a huge event. It is going to be visible across most of the United States, even in the Atlanta area, although I think you need to go up a little further north to get the maximum of the full solar darkness that happens. I think it only takes about 3 minutes for it to be completely obscured. But there is a massive energy that comes along with that as well. And from what I understand, that 2017 is a 1 year. So it is a very big year in terms of setting the new energy that we all will be moving forward in. So from what I understand, it's not going to let up anytime soon. You just need to rest yourself, properly hydrate, take care of your body. If you're feeling energetically low, then take a nap, if you can, but don't think that you're just experiencing it randomly, because there is something happening in the collective that does not seem to be random.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I would definitely agree. Yeah, for me, it's I kind of, last time I was at the station, I had done a little reading on myself, and it told me I was coming into this period. And it just seemed like everything got really, really quiet. And I'm like, okay, nothing is kind of flowing, but yet, with me writing, I've seen a boost in that, you know what I mean, and just ideas and connections and different things like that. But on all, still I'm like, okay, is there a reason why I'm kind of feeling kind of even and nothing spiking? And I think it's great to know, and the information to be out there to let, those of us know who are not as familiar, that, okay, this is coming up, this is how you're going to feel, this is what you need to do. Because for me, it was just like, stop, meditate, what are we doing here? What's going on here? And just waiting, and in that waiting, being patient for the answers to kind of just flow on in. And for me, that's what it's been like, okay, anxiety a little bit and wondering if the connection's there, and then just watching it flow in like really easy. So I definitely feel like there's something different going on, and I do feel like a gearing up for something, like something big is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some light workers have mentioned that new ways of them manifesting their gifts are coming in, things that they didn't ever really experience before. And it's like you kind of know what your psychic gift and ability is, and you're used to doing it like you normally do it. But there's now like some way that it's not working exactly like it was, but it's not in a bad way. You might be getting more clairaudient instead of clairvoyant, or starting to see different types of spiritual energies rather than how you used to channel those energies. So I think that's pretty cool if there's an expansion of that energy coming out right now.
I can agree. Yeah, I think that's so.
I definitely agree, especially in all the turmoil that we can see that's going on in the world socially. To feel and to see a strong energy coming through that is positive and that is with change is very hopeful in a time where we kind of think everything is going upside down. So, and for it to bring more clarity to our gifts is like a double bonus, because I know that, again, within this social climate, as a race, as far as the human race, we're struggling. We are really struggling socially in trying to figure out who and what we are and what our purpose is. And this time has been trying. We've had more children born with autism. We've had more disasters and natural disasters. Just recently, they had a piece of an iceberg break off the size of Denver. So,
I saw that.
Global warming is a reality. You know what I mean? This isn't something that we can ignore any longer, even though we want to, and some people want us to. That, not only are we changing spiritually, but our world is changing. Our environment is changing. And I kind of feel like this is all in, divine order itself, the whole change, because something had to happen in order for us to wake up and truly understand that our purpose is not tied to our material possessions or our popularness within social media, that we all have a destiny, we all have a gift, and we all have a path that to move the species forward. So, I shared with you earlier where I'm so excited because there's more information out now than there's ever been as far as those things that we speak about in whispers. Mm-hmm. So I'm waiting for the moment, and I think we're on the verge of it when we speak with loud voices to say, hey, this is what's going on. This is not something that is dangerous to your health or your spiritual soul, but you're growing. It's time to come off and shed off that, that old skin, and let's get on with the new one of repairing ourselves spiritually as well as socially.
I absolutely agree. Now, I think that I have talked with several people who are both, psychic and not psychic per se, just kind of aware individuals that I have conversations with, and uniformly there does appear to be a financial constriction that kind of came and took people off guard just in the last maybe 3 weeks or so, where it was like you were okay before, but something kind of maybe fell out of timing. And, it's been across the board, and a lot of the people I've talked with are saying, I don't know where this came from, and it's a little hard for me to be positive because I've got this stress going on, and it's kind of killing my vibe. I don't know where it came from, but I'm hustling. I'm super tired because I'm trying to make things work, and this was unanticipated. And, what I'm sensing is that it's like don't lose sight of the true vibration by the distractions of negativity, which are always around us, and it's very hard to not look at this world that you describe and start, or look at the news and start to feel lower in your energy and vibration. And I mean, honestly, financial energy is the quickest way to bring a negative experience into someone's reality, is for there to be a financial crisis on there. Yeah, and
that'll kill the feng shui. That'll kill it.
You know how negative energy is. It gets you every time, and it's like sometimes I can't even be around certain people if they have a negative energy or a negative spirit, and it just sucks the life out of you. And you have to kind of like tell yourself, well, I'm going to walk this way because, I'm from Detroit. I like to cuss people out, so I tend to not want to do that.
Just going to give them just a little piece of it. Just a little piece of it.
Right. Just give them a little piece of it, something. Like you got to have a couple of words. I'm just going to give you a few choice words. But, I try to stay away from it just, because a lot of times it's not even worth it. And then you end up needing to smudge yourself or get a seesaw bath or something to remove that negative energy. And it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah,
it's horrible. Well, as I say, it's hard because say it's normally a positive person who you turn to for positive reinforcement, and when something hits them, then it's not that you want to withdraw your support because you realize that at this moment it might be for me to help uplift the person, even though I might have my own energetic things going on. How do you deal with the reality of negative circumstances and energy without attaching or bringing that energy beyond a healthy level in compassion? You know what I'm saying? Because, I know, Marcus, you're not an uncompassionate person at all. You stop and have kind words for people. And I know there's a difference between, persistent negativity with people who just never see the positive in anything, Debbie Downers,
the energy,
and people who are situationally experiencing negativity rather than persistently,
Well, I definitely agree. For me, when you were talking about just recently, I've noticed in my pack that a lot of the very professional career set women are, either losing their jobs or walking away from them. And just, in the last, let's say, year and a half, I know at least 7 different women that just threw their hands up and said, it's enough. And it wasn't even, I got something lined up, nothing like that, like just not this anymore, not this. And seeing women step in to their dreams where, we have been tied to corporate feeding tubes and buying the latest baby food in materialistic, aspirations to kind of feed what is empty, which is our spirituality. So to me, to see a surge, especially of women and of black women coming out of the corporate arena like, okay, I'm done, let's get on to the next thing. And even if it's, opening up a nonprofit or even stepping out on their own and doing their own thing. And it's that transition in the middle that I find them, you find them kind of struggling because, like you said, it's a hit when you have become regular in your routine, and even in your financial routine. A check is going to hit at this day, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and everything's budgeted out. And then one day you hit, and it's not there. And you're looking at your savings, and you're trying to figure out what is really going on. And with everything that's going on, a lot of these women are, really rethinking their roles in corporation and that balance between work and family. And I think that in itself is amazing.
In my experience and the people I'm talking with, it's not just women. There seems to be a steady stream. It's not fast-flowing, but it has been very persistent in my awareness the last few years of people who are feeling a sense of soul-level dissatisfaction with the way that they have been able to use their gifts and abilities. And most people get a job because they're good at it, they like what they do, but it's possible that you may hit this crossroads where you're like, you know what, it's not really achieving the help that I thought it would help to people, and I'm not as happy as I was doing it. And I'm men and women, and I'm seeing that with people of all ages. But, you know, I'm 45, so there has been a steady stream of my college peers who in the last 5 years, from looking at their Facebook feeds, have walked away from that, again, what you were originally doing. But here's the thing. They're all reusing the skills that they acquired during that first career, if you will, and they're finding very unique and individual ways to then do that and then some. And I think the biggest thing is that they want to control it, so they leave a corporation because there's not an ability to control how your effort is used as much. And entrepreneurship gives you that space where you can really then say, you know what, I think it needs to be this way, and where I can control it, then I will do so and be able to be much happier inside, even if I'm not maybe as financially successful right away.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And then also knowing that, you know, it doesn't take much to make you happy. I think we're all kind of learning that lesson, you know, having learned it for a while with the economy fluctuating, that it doesn't take as much as you thought to survive. And there's a whole lot of things that you can kind of do without and are better for it. You know, and getting down to the simplest thing, you see more gardens starting to pop up. You know, whether or not it's community gardens or individual gardens, you're starting to see more of a movement towards, you know, being conscious not only mentally and physically, but spiritually. You know, we've seen a lot of going back and forth with religious beliefs, you know, and the negative part of it. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of touching moments of people that really, you know, are coming past that, and they're looking at, you know what, there is no difference, and we need to show that more and more. So, you know, you see the negative part of it. And I think with a lot of us, it's like, where do we fall in? You know what I mean? And especially at a certain age, I think your mind starts thinking, you know, when you were younger, you wanted to hang out, and it was all about the friends and the this, that, and the other. And as you get older, you look at more quality things. What truly makes me happy? Who makes me happy? And, you know what I mean, what is really enough in your life? You know, even to the point of reconstructing friendships and how you look at your, you know, look at yourself and look at your family, and you see a lot of that. And I think that ties into that, people looking in the mirror and saying, oh my goodness, I'm worth more than a piece of paper told me I am, and that I can achieve it. So why not try it? So, you know, again, in the midst of what we think is turmoil, I feel we're still seeing a lot of growth, but growth in a different area. Do we need more? Yeah. But, you know, as long as we're moving forward, I'm fine.
Right. I have another caller who has just called in, and I do have a question from someone who in the chat capacity. This is the Viberarian show, and I am on this evening with just having a wonderful conversation with Monica and Marcus, and I believe that we are now able to add Kelly Lin Prime to the call. Kelly, are you with us?
Yes. How y'all doing?
Yay. Hey, how are you?
What's up?
Welcome. This is Kelly Lin Prime of Fitness for the Soul with Kelly Lin Prime, and I am very glad that you called in. We have been talking about the state of the world today and the energies that we're feeling. We talked about the solstice a little bit and the eclipse coming up, and one of the things that was mentioned was that there was probably a retrograde coming, and you, of course, have a class,
Yes!
a workshop that you facilitate about Mercury retrograde. So I would love for you to share a little bit about what this means for us as we head into that time period. And we're just, again, flowing with the conversation. So everybody just pause and give.
I want to start by saying I am not an astrologer. However, I have a wonderful business partner named Monique Ruffin, and she is the astrologer. I am the energy. So we have paired up, and it was last year. I was thinking of how Mercury retrograde can be a very challenging time. And a lot of times and Mercury retrograde typically happens once a quarter. So if you're in a certain quadrant of the year and you're kind of going through a rough time, you might either be in a shadow period of Mercury retrograde, or you might actually be in the retrograde, because what people typically don't know is that an entire Mercury retrograde is about 60 days. So we have a period of about 3 weeks. That is the Mercury retrograde, but we have shadow period leading up, and we have shadow period on the other side of it. So, yes, we are approaching the shadow period of this coming Mercury retrograde. The shadow period starts around July 24th. And what's interesting is that we have, let me look at my calendar. Do you guys know the date of there's a lunar eclipse?
That's really early in August.
That's in August. Yes, the lunar eclipse is on August 7th, and then the solar eclipse is on the 21st. So there's 2 weeks between the two of those. So an eclipse, the eclipse energy within Mercury retrograde, you already know that's going to stir some stuff up. So
we got a little bit of
what Monique and I have designed is we have designed a program to help guide you through that period. There's daily astrological guidance and daily intuitive and energetic guidance as well. So we are actually in the process of doing that. We updated our website today, and I have a friend who's on the way here. He and I are going to finish a couple of updates on the website, but it's mercuryretrogradereset.com. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. So if that sounds appealing to any of you and something that you might want to check out, I would love to have you guys follow us and see what we're up to. I did catch a little bit of what Monica was talking about, and I quit my job in 2011. I was a public school teacher, and I had been studying Reiki and pranic healing and psychic mediumship and all of that. And by 2011, I was like, I'm through with this. I can't stomach how this system is attempting to brainwash and not really teach kids anything.
Right. Yeah, and it's not a random thing that this is happening. And I think, Marcus, you've switched career focuses in the last 4 years as well, haven't you?
Well, I guess if you consider me a Jamaican. I guess you could say that because I switched jobs so many times, and sometimes people ask me, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I do everything." But well, when I moved to Georgia, I started off working for an 18-wheeler company, driving 18-wheelers. But in the last 4 years, I basically had my own flooring company, and that was okay, and I liked it and everything. And then I got into real estate, and so real estate kind of stuck with me, and I began to like that more and wanted to do that more 24 hours, as opposed to trying to do both, because doing both was killing me, So prior to me writing a book and finding out about my gifts and starting to do stuff like that, sometimes I cut hair, I'm a barber, I do this, I do everything. You name it, I've probably had the job or I've done it for a period of time. So I never really sit still. That's the Libra in me. I hate to sit still and let grass grow under my feet. So.
Well, we do have a couple call questions that have come in to see what the what is. The first thing is, and I don't know who might be have something to contribute on this. We have a caller who wants to know about pendulums and divination with pendulums. So for people who just heard me talk a different language, like what? So a pendulum would
I
be
could actually
an
answer that
object.
question too.
Okay, well, Go ahead, Marcus, to start.
Yeah, but go ahead and explain what it is for people that don't know. Yeah.
Well, a pendulum can be anything. It can be something that is specially crafted that hangs from a type of string or necklace or chain, or it could even be something as simple as like your key ring, or the whole point is that there is a weighted dangling object that is able to freely move around attached to a string or connecting length of chain that allows the energy to move through you to it to indicate answers to questions that you are posing to the spirit realm. Does that sound like a reasonable definition?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so divination is the act of trying to find out messages from the divine realms or from the spiritual realm. And people use various tools or can use various tools to do this, and so these would be considered divinatory arts. And pendulums, dowsing rods where people are looking for water, oracle cards, crystals. I mean, there's any number of odd things and practices that can be considered divination, but pendulum is a very specific one that I personally don't have a lot of success with pendulums, but I have friends who very strongly know and receive strong waving circles and motions. I mean, their pendulums just go crazy, and it's like sometimes as soon as they put their hand over a pendulum, it just immediately starts going because their energetic connection is so strong.
Mm-hmm.
Do you use pendulums, Kelly?
I have mine in my hand right now. I was like, oh, my pendulum. I haven't used that in such a long time. For me, energy healing is my main, it's my area of strength. So I have noticed that even for me, when I am giving energy to a client, there is a pull with my body. So I will feel a pull like, okay, more energy. And when it's enough, it's almost like there's this, there's like the stopping of the energy, and the stopping of the energy kind of like sends me back on my heels. So it totally shifts my weight. So I feel like I kind of have that pull in my body, and I am very connected to sensation in my body. So if someone else has something going on in a particular chakra or a particular area, I will often, I may not feel it physically, but I may notice that maybe I'm rubbing my temples. And because I'm rubbing my temples, I'm like, okay, so maybe there's headaches or maybe there's something going on in that particular part of the body. I do use pendulums. I tend to be a little telekinetic, which means I can look at this thing and I can pretty much tell it to spin in a circle, and it'll spin in a circle. And I can say, go the other way, and it'll go the other way.
Mm. Is that challenging to when you're reading then?
I mean, it can be, because there's a debate. Okay, is it really going, or am I willing it to go that way? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And Marcus, do you use pendulums then?
Well, remember before we had a conversation and I talked about this class that you could take to, develop your gifts further, and you finally got your stuff together and you went and took the class.
Yes.
Well, in that class, they talked about using a pendulum. And I had never heard of it and thought, I guess, why not try anything? So I ended up using one. And from what I've learned and seen and experienced dealing with pendulums, either you have it or you don't. It's no in between. There's no 50% or no 20 or 30 or 65. Either you're 0 or 100. And some people just, it's not for them. And some people, they have other means and tools. I tried it, and it was very interesting to me. It actually worked, and it worked pretty good. But I guess I kind of psyched myself out of it because I didn't want to become dependent on it. And let's say I'm out of town or, just don't happen to have my pendulum with me and someone wants to do a reading. And I always tell myself, well, maybe I shouldn't, and I couldn't walk around with it all the time because the one I have was pretty big. So, I was like, I'm not going to.
You're not going to pull it out in the middle of the bank and ask a question?
Nope. That's funny. I really wouldn't. And it's almost like alcohol with me. Like when I drink alcohol, I get so amplified and readings just seem to flow. It's so easy, and it's almost fun to do readings when I got a little buzz or a sippy sip going on. So I always, and then I had to tell myself, okay, well, let me not be dependent upon that. I don't want to be the drunk psychic or the drunk clairvoyant, And so I tend to just, fall back and believe in myself and what I can do and stuff like that. Now, it's okay every now and then I'll grab the pendulum just to see if it still works. And it actually still does. I have a cousin in the family, and, I guess, gifts are just swimming throughout my family. But my cousin was showing me that she has a pendulum, and she knew how to use it. And, I mean, the minute she picked it up, it just started taking off in all kinds of directions. And I was like, wow. And I was, like, kind of surprised to see this in her because, when you see gifts like that in other people, it's still surprising, I guess. And I had never seen her do anything like that before, so it really surprised me. It was cool. And, I like them. I don't use them all the time. I hardly ever use them in a reading.
So, I mean, we've all kind of shared what pendulums are. Let's put together a real quick, if you want to start using a pendulum, this is what you absolutely, essentially have to know about it and what you should do to begin experimenting with this. I mean, my first thing is always set your intentions and call in your protectors.
You've got to get a pendulum that you resonate with. Like, go to a place where they sell them and, pick them up, see how it feels in your hand, see if it's something that you think is beautiful. Mine is made out of rose quartz, and it has a pearl on the end of it. So it's very feminine. It's very light. I was just attracted to it. So choose something that resonates with you first of all, and then just get one that is inexpensive and just play with it.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is you don't even have to really start by buying something. Like if you have a necklace on a chain, or I've seen people even fashion it out of using a type of like string and just tying it around something that is heavier, putting 4 or 5, 6 inches between your hand and the object so that when you resting your hand, it can move around. Because, I mean, me personally, I bought a couple pendulums, and I mean, they're beautiful, but now I don't have any use for them because I'm not using it as a tool, you know. So before you invest any money, maybe you can do some home. I've seen people tie keychains or a single key on a key, or key itself, not even on the ring, because it's heavier, to a string, and you should be able to have energy move through it. You know, crystals, I think, when you buy a pendulum, of course, amplify energy, but I don't think it's essential, you know, to do it. I always go for, like, the low barrier to entry, you know, before you go investing a bunch of money, or, you know, I've seen them as expensive as $30, $40, as cheap as $10, but how could we do Home Depot style at-home psychic tools from Home Depot, you know, craft wizardry or something like that?
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I have a necklace that has a pendant on it that I wear almost all the time. So if you have something like that, use that because it's already attuned to your energy.
Right, right.
And there's some other things, too, that you're forgetting. It's kind of important for someone starting out using the pendulum. First, you have to get one, like you said, and, you know, when Kelly mentioned, you know, pick one that kind of calls to you, that you can kind of feel has your energy, and, you know, and you feel comfortable with it. And then after that, the first thing I do, just like with buying a crystal, is you clean it, or I would put sage smoke around it, you know, to kind of clear the energy of the people who've dealt with it and had it before in the past, or someone who's handled it before. I always clear the energy off of anything I get. And if I don't use sage, I'll use like warm salt water just for a quick second to kind of rinse it and just get the other energy off of it. And then I put my energy into it. And that could mean, you know, walking around with it in your pocket. Sometimes I put them in my hands, and I actually have some of my crystals here now. And I've always keep them in my hands, and people will hear me doing this, and they're like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, these are my crystals." "Oh, let me see them." "No, can't touch them, just me." You know, and I do that. I do that for a while, and I'm like, you know, just my energy.
Do you ever have people, like, they just go straight for, like, whatever you're wearing, like your crystal or your pendant or whatever, and they want to be touching it? Do you ever have that happen?
Well, not really. I'm one of the nicest people you could ever meet. Joelle can you know, co-sign on that one. But a lot of people say I look mean, or I don't have a very welcoming face. So it's just my face. It's not really me and my personality. So it's very rare where someone will just walk up and try to touch or grab something, you know. But like with my crystals, I've been like at a get together or a party, and I have them, and I would sit them on a table, and someone would just reach to pick it up, and I'm like, no, you know. And so they kind of like they kind of get it when I say, you know, don't touch that, you know. And if someone did, it's not like it's the end of the world, you know. But you know, I prefer just to put. Yeah, I prefer to just put my energy into my crystals, and the pendulum I have, I keep it in a drawer. I haven't even touched it in probably a year or two, and you know, but it's there, and it's just a string. And when I saw it in the store, it just kind of like called to me because I'm a big fan of the color blue. and any shades of blue that I feel like I haven't seen before, or something that's kind of like different or stands out, I tend to be drawn to them. And so when I saw this pendulum, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And that's what, caused me. But the first thing I did was I cleared it, put some sage smoke around it, and dipped it in some salt water. And then I just touched it, me, myself, and I, and until I felt like my energy was in it really good. And that's when I started practicing with it.
Well, I do think it's important that I do think it's important that people set their intention not only for the tool that they're using, but for the communication that you are attempting to receive. And that's super important to, dwell in a place of protecting. And our verbal and intentional statement of that energy is really what triggers that, So if you're sitting down with the pendulum and say, I'm calling on my guides and the highest living unconditional energy to be present and to communicate with me, and I only receive that which is of unconditional love, or whatever your particular way of expressing what you would feel comfortable with in terms of opening yourself up to receive these messages that come through. You don't want to just start swinging a pendulum around and open yourself up to receive information. And then, honestly, I don't know who could say, oh, here's an open phone, let me pick up the phone, Well, maybe that's a bit overly cautious of me, but I've learned through the classes and things that I hear other people say that you always, always need to clarify what you are doing before you start doing it.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense to me.
And Kelly, you were getting ready to say something?
I was just about to say that, I asked that question to Marcus because, I have a lot of really beautiful jewelry wrapped with crystals that when people see them, they want to touch them. And so I might either just ask them to not touch it, or I allow them to touch it, and then I say, it's not really proper etiquette to touch other people's crystals. And then they're like, oh, I didn't know. And I was like, okay, well, now you know.
Well, it's kind of like people touching pregnant women's bellies. They tend to think,
yes.
oh, you're pregnant. They come up to touch you, and I've seen people be like, hey, now some women are very much like, oh, but other people are like, you know what, I don't know everybody's energy to just touch me and my unborn child. Or your bald head, Marcus. Do you get that? People would just come up and touch your head. Well, I was going to say, people always come to touch my hair, too. So, some people have boundary violation issues, just a general principle. They feel like I can be in the person's face because I want to.
Someone will walk up to me, and thank God it's usually a lady, but, they'll say, oh, your skin is so soft, and they'll just rub you in the head. And I'm like, wait a minute. like, where'd that come from? Like, hold on.
But you know what?
Right.
I am short. I'm 5'1", and if somebody pats me on the head, I don't like that either because it makes me feel like you're treating me like I'm 5.
Right. That's horrible. I hate that.
Well, I think that some people who bring their crystals in public or their tools in public, I bring my oracle card library to the elevation station events that I have monthly in the Atlanta area as part of a place for people to learn how to or get to expose themselves to card divination. And there are some people who are like, oh, I would never take my decks out and let people touch them. But I believe that I have the power to clear any energies that happen to be encountered, and I'm intentionally allowing that to happen. And, crystal people who well, sure, you can touch it. They don't bring their most intimate, private crystals out. You know what I'm saying? You're not going
Right.
to bring your yoni crystal or your lingam stone out for people to touch it.
What?
And if people don't know what those are.
I've heard of the yoni crystal, so oh boy.
Yeah, those are internally personal crystals, if you will. So no, you're not going to bring those out for everybody to handle.
Oh, wait, why not?
I thought I heard that
Why
wrong.
not?
So we know a yoni is.
Why not? Why not? Do
Why
you
not?
think that your yoni does not contain magic? Because it does.
Oh, it does, but I'm not bringing my yoni crystals out to be on the table for people to handle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I might have my.
That can be cleared and cleaned just like any other crystal.
Well, there's some things it's like a toothbrush. You just don't share. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's your personal preference, but if you want to put some magic in a crystal, that's where it needs to go.
Right.
Really? That's interesting. Okay.
Listen, sexual energy is the most healing energy that there is. The Kundalini energy, It's the most powerful. Mm-hmm. It's the power of creation. It's the power of physical manifestation. I mean, it doesn't get better than that.
Here's a funny.
I can say one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick. I used to ride motorcycles, and I still love them and everything. I just got, in my opinion, too old for them. There's the street bikes, and it was like a common rule amongst anybody that rode that, like, if we all pull up to a restaurant or go out to eat somewhere, and we all get off of our bikes, and someone sees my bike and they say, "Oh, that's really nice," you know, it was just a given that you don't walk up and get on my bike and sit on it, you know, like, "Oh, this is really cool," and, you know, sit down and play with the handles and all of that stuff. That's how a lot of fights get started. And so it was almost like you don't just jump on somebody's bike, you know. And I guess, you know, that was just like proper etiquette. And so what people would always do is they would always ask if they saw my bike and thought it would look pretty cool and wanted to sit on it. You were supposed to approach me first and then say, "Hey, this is a really nice bike. Do you mind if I sit on it?" Then I give you the permission and it's okay, you know. But I think you should ask first. I mean, especially with a yoni. I mean, you don't know if you're going to pick that up, what you're going to walk away with. I mean, I don't know. But it's funny.
Well, it's interesting. I want to finish up the pendulum and so we can get on to other things, but I did go to, just this week, I always go to free webinars that I'll get solicited for. Either I'll see them on Facebook or I'll get them in my email, and they're like, "Come learn how to do such and such, free for an hour." And, of course, it's usually a preparation for a larger sales pitch, but a lot of times you get very valuable information out of that hour. And this week I spent an hour listening to a program about orgasmic manifestation. I kid you not.
Yeah.
You know, so when you're saying that, Kelly, I'm like, well, that's a synchronistic hit this week, because they were talking about the focus that happens in that moment is extremely powerful, and that creation, if it's powerful enough to create the seeds of a new person, then, of course, you can create new anything, objects, reality, manifestation, with that same orgasmic expression. So I think that's funny that you happen to bring that up this evening.
Facilitator?
I cannot remember the name of hers, but her program is called Orgasmic Manifestation. She's kind of trademarked that, so I'm sure there's information out there. I really can't remember her name.
Well,
overall, it was.
There's another practice called oming, which is orgasmic meditation, and that is by a woman named Nicole Daedone, and she wrote a book called Slow Sex. So if you don't, and it's called oming Oming for short.
Okay. Oh,
that sounds interesting.
So
Definitely.
The gist of oming is that it is a yoni massage, and it focuses on the clitoris using one finger in a very particular area of the clitoris, very, very lightly, and I'm talking about microscopic movements for 15 minutes.
What?
So it's about, goal of it is to help women really get into their body and feel sensation, get out of their head and come into the body and really feel the sensations and have healing happen.
Oh, I mean, that seems to
interesting.
parallel it seems to parallel the yoni stones as well, because you're placing energy within yourself and that women who wear them, of course, are aware of that being part of their person and become more sensitive and will change the particular yoni stone to change the properties of healing that they're wanting to bring in. So that's very interesting. I guess men don't. It wouldn't be quite the same thing.
Oh no!
No. Okay, let's be practical here. Men can get the what we call yoni eggs as well. You're not going to put them inside of you, but you can carry them in a pocket or hold them, meditate with them. I mean, they can have the same quality.
So are you saying you can put the stones next to your stones?
I just knew that's what she was going to say. Like, tuck them on up underneath here, and you'll be okay.
Oh, that was great.
Oh, that is hilarious.
That was so hilarious. I think when Kelly started telling that story, I could have swore I heard Monica say, "What?"
You know I did. Like, wait a minute, hold up. Because immediately I'm like, okay, where is he going to tuck it? Is it going to be up underneath, or where's she getting ready to go with it?
Oh,
I
my
mean,
God.
That's
so
the right
funny.
kind of underwear on, that it could work. The ones that really like hold everything tight to the body, you could put the stone in there. I mean, it could work.
Well,
and I think there is a lingam.
I just want to speak for the guys and say, nope, that's not going to happen. It's not going to work.
Well, I do believe the lingam. I think the lingam stone, which is more like a phallic shape, like a penis, might be the counterpart to the yoni eggs, and so maybe that practice works better because it's a companion rather than a possible injury. You know what I'm saying?
Well, even like with tighty whities, I just don't see it working. Tighty whities always start off tighty whities. But yeah, after a couple hours of walking and working and doing things, tighty whities get loosey goosey. And I just nothing stays in where it's supposed to be.
Compression.
Well,
the compression
that might work. Well, yeah.
I would think the adjustment factor would be a bit much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm going to say no for that one.
On behalf of the men contingent, Marcus says no.
No, I don't think that would work.
We're definitely going to have to come on and have another episode about sexual energy. I just can see it as it's emerging here.
Yes.
I want to shout out to the callers who have been listening and holding on. I know we've got a couple people who listen to the show on the road when they're driving truck. And so hello to our truck driving fans who are listening, spreading their vibration all around this nation as they're delivering our goods and products for us. all of you stay safe out there, and I appreciate your support of the show. This is the Viberarian show, and I'm having a wonderful conversation this evening with Marcus, Monica, and Kelly Lin Prime. As you can see, we're just really enjoying ourselves. And to talk one last bit about the pendulum before I bring up the other topic that came up in the chat room, one of the key things with pendulum questioning is really understanding how to ask questions of spirit, especially if you're at a basic pendulum beginner kind of phase. You're really kind of trying to stay in the yes/no question. But a lot of us ask questions that are too ambiguous to really, we don't know that we're not asking the really question that we really want to know. Most of us don't learn how to do that. And so as a librarian, I would get that all the time. People come up to you and say, hey, I want to find a book. Okay, can you tell me about that book? I'm like, well, you need to be a little more specific, okay? Oh, it's fiction. Oh, thank you. That just narrowed down half the written materials in the world, but let's be a little more specific. So when you're working with the pendulum, it's very much like that. You can't say, will I have a love of my life, my soulmate becoming? Well, it could say yes, but spirit is dealing outside of the realm of time as we understand it linearly. And so it could be next lifetime, honestly. It sounds kind of wild, but
you
have any strategies for...
That is the same thing when I'm doing readings. If you're not asking me a specific question, it's just going to take more time for me to sift through the information. So if you I ask clients to prepare questions ahead of time, and I talk very specifically with them about the type of questions to formulate. And I talk about specific questions versus general questions. So what normally happens is when people come with a list of questions, we end up answering the questions without even reading and going through all the questions. So it's all about setting intention.
Okay. Well, that helped me understand because I was trying to figure out exactly how, again, with the yes or no answer, and, and like you said, you had to be more specific regardless. And
I don't mind when I'm doing readings. If you want to ask a very specific question, and it doesn't have to be a yes or no, I tend to close my eyes and see what images come to me, and for some reason it just works out where I say what I'm supposed to say. But it's easier for me to get a yes or no question because then I can ask my intuition, and the intuition is a yes or no response type of thing, and then once I do that and I get that yes, then I'll see something in my head that says, okay, now add this to it and further break it down this way, and that's how the readings work. I mean, no one really taught me how to do readings. I kind of saw some examples and took a class and all of that stuff and everything, but it took me to just know that I'm a people person. I know how to talk and have a conversation, and that's how I got into doing them. And once you start, you keep going, and that's what worked for me.
Yep.
Well, and I think that if you know you're going to go into a session with your pendulum, write down ahead of time your questions, tweak them, and there are plenty of resources out on the Google for questions to questions to ask your pendulum that are already from people who've got experience that can help you with language and statements, but then to write down your responses and keep track of what you're doing as you're receiving the answers. And I honestly found it was more effective for me. The yes-no kind of stuff was less effective, but I did find examples of various grids and wheels that can help you spell out words. And I think a lot of times people get like spooked because it starts to look like Ouija boards, and Ouija boards and divination tools we know have been like, have a bad rap, and everybody's like, oh, I don't want to deal with the Ouija board. I'm opening myself up to the devil, that kind of thing.
Well, every scary movie starts off with a teenager messing with that daggone Ouija board and then opens a door that they can't close. So, and that's the general consensus, you know what I mean? But I find
it's
it
not
interesting
necessarily truthful.
Right, and for me, it was always, coming from a Christian background. As soon as you said pendulum, immediately I kind of like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. And there's just so many things that even I'm feeling that I'm open, still hesitate. Like I flash back to, is that the last thing I remember it is, I think an old movie I watched where they were using it to find the witch or something like that. And I never looked at it as another way of divination as far as the cards. And I think that's really interesting, the part about making sure you have your questions ready to think about it, really get specific, but really think about it before you actually go in, even to do that. Or like she was saying, even a reading. A lot of us come in just with like general questions, like you said, and not knowing that there's something specific. We're still not asking the right questions.
Can I ask Monica a question?
Sure.
Okay. I want to know because I grew up, Christian as well, and I always had the, upbringing, and we were like Church of God Christian, where it was like you couldn't have earrings, jewelry, listen to worldly music, this, that, it was rough.
Couldn't wear pants in the chapel and everything.
Right. Any jewelry. Anything was just a watch or a wedding ring. That was it. And like jazz, forget it. Even though it didn't have words to it, it was still worldly music. And so I went through a lot of that growing up. So as an adult, when I decided to continue going to church and building my own religion and everything else too, it turned into like a lot of times the biggest debates and conversations and stuff I would get into would be with people who were Christians, because they felt like that's the devil, or that's negative, that's nasty.
Steer you back on a good path.
Right. And so a lot of times I had to tell myself that as a Christian, I believe in a lot of things and stuff, but I always put God first. So that, to me, made my gift even stronger. And the more I would pray before I did a reading and stuff, the stronger the gift would be. And I always told myself, I said, well, if this is something God didn't want me to do, then, I want a horrible reading where somebody tell me I suck or I'm just horrible, God awful, and my readings would be so good. And everything. And I'm like, well, I know that there's some God in here, but I just hate when I see like people like Wendy Williams and certain people that say, oh, that's sorcery and that's this and I don't like that. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good you don't like it, but that don't mean it's sorcery. That don't mean it's the devil. That don't mean it's negative or anything.
Right.
And, if it wasn't for some people getting messages from mediums and people like us and everything, I think, sometimes that closure is what they need, and you really bless people, and that's what you're here for.
Right.
But, it was just that one of those things where I kind of grew up. When you said that, it sounded like, we had a similar upbringing. And that's what I want to ask you. Like, I was going to say, how do you deal with that? Cause, that's because for me, it's still a struggle for me.
Yes, and it's still a struggle for me. For me, I think God had a really good sense of humor when he decided to drop me in this particular family, because I come from a long line of ministers and healers and, really Christian powerhouses. So when I came along, I had a little bit of a double teaching. I had an aunt who was into Yoruba, and I had my mother and my grandmother who went from Baptist to Church of God in Christ and, the whole nine. So for me, it was a struggle almost the whole time, because I didn't know what was wrong, why it had stopped to resonate with me. We were the kids that had to read the Bible several different times and Sunday school, and then just one day it just stopped resonating with me, and I was like, okay. And then I went through a period of, I just don't believe in anything. And the biggest fight were the ministers. It was constantly a challenge. I think I told Joelle the one time they even decided they were going to exorcise me, and I'm like, really?
Oh my God! What?
We're just going to It was deep because they brought me in, church full of people, and I'm from up north, so
me too.
The tongue was like
Detroit.
On fire. So and I'm looking at it, and it's my family members, and they're praying, and they got the sage going, and I'm like,
oh my God, that's horrible.
Me.
That's horrible.
Horrible. You know what I mean? And it was, but I was in a bad place at the time, but it was a necessary place for what I went through. But for them, it was, the combination of me challenging certain things about what I truly believed based off the infrastructure that I was raised in, and just finding out that my gifts worked outside of that infrastructure. So it was like a really kind of crazy time for me, but I found
we got very similar stories, very similar.
Right. I found more to challenging, like, they wanted to prove me, even with my mom, and I think that has been the most amazing journey that I've had, is that her being so Bible-based, and what I'm going through now, first I had to get her to stop praying against me because my God revealed that she was the one that was praying against me, and she was praying in fear because there is such a stigma of what they consider the occult. So her thing was, I don't want you to go down a doorway and open a door and something's waiting, you don't know how to. And it was the same thing you said. Mom, if God showed me this path and has me on it, then I got to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he has me and that I'm where I'm supposed to be. But the amazing part is that as I bring her information that I get, from talking to people like you and Joelle and visiting the different workshops, that when I pass the information to hear, it literally clicking with her. And, even to the point of her saying, maybe you can ask the question for me. Mom, that's not how it works. You can't, you got to do it yourself.
Right.
But it's just, that was my biggest, I realized that she was the one that I wanted more than anything to kind of just break the shell because she's such a powerful energy person. I mean, my mom, she's amazing, and I'm like, Mom, do you know how amazing you can be? Even, you can spread out even farther if you just break the barriers. And I had to learn, Marcus, and what was my biggest lesson, over a certain age, I let it go. I don't even argue with them. I don't try to get them to see my point or to understand where I'm at. I'm like, okay, it's fine. Because I realized, I realized that was the religion that helped them get through some of the most trying times in our culture. So they're not ready to let go, and I can feel that. And I just,
and I used to be the same way, and there were times when I couldn't do a reading on someone who was atheist, and then I thought about it, and I was like, well, maybe I'm the one who's creating that conflict, and I said because I'm pushing my Christianity down their throat, and then I had to open my mind and say, okay, well, let me come into this and pray for myself, and then do the reading. And I noticed how things changed, and I could do a reading with anybody pretty much now, and I would get attacked, from out of nowhere. Well, wait a minute, you said something about clairvoyant. What's that? Wait a minute, are you still a Christian, right? And I'm like, yes, that didn't change. I woke up in the same body I've been in all my life. Nothing's changed.
Right.
And that would be the start of the conversation. So I'm sorry, Joelle, I'm trying to take everything way to the left off track and everything.
No, this is
I want to bring up and ask.
This is perfectly aligned. I was going to say to Monica, even the way that you stated your position, which is that God must have a sense of humor because he put me in this family that is very deep into religiousness. And I would say, well, that's rather a short-term view of your energetic history. If we're looking at the modern Christian era, that's only 2,000 years. And I think there is this kind of false idea that is very consistently repeated over and over again, that world history, the history of beings and humanity and presence, began at 0 A.D., because that's what we count our current year system from. But before you were a prophetess or a priest or a preacher, you might have been the medicine woman of your community. You might have been the wise elder of your village. You know, so there was language outside of what the fear-based portion of institutional religion has brought in things to separate us from the true natural spiritual connection that existed. And we all know the Roman Empire had a political goal in making Christianity the religion of the known civilization. And so we have to step outside of that language of framing ourselves to say, you know, no, I am in the right family, because my family has a history of matriarchal lineage, an epigenetic, that's another conversation, an epigenetic legacy. It's in our DNA to have vision. You know, Marcus has his whole family of people who are readers and seers. You come from a long line of women visionaries who have only recently been known as prophetesses, ministers, and that language that is specific to that. But it's not that.
And it's
so much older.
That you have,
and that's what I had to learn.
That you have your aunt, who is the Yoruba influence as well.
Well, I looked at it after a while, and it was funny because I went through, especially after the exorcism, I was just like, you know, I really, you know, just really kind of cut me off.
I would love to one day get that full story. Like, really, I really would. I mean, if you don't mind, like one day I'm just so shocked by that. Like, I'm like, what?
Yeah,
I'm gonna put it on my episode list.
It's funny now, but it was
We're gonna
not
have a show
funny
about
at all. But it's
because I went through something like that, but not that bad. And I mean, it was a time as well when I started finding myself, and I used to have a tail in the back of my head, and I have Cherokee in the history of the family, and I was just doing different things in it, but that was unacceptable. And I would go to the bathroom and come back, and everybody would be staring at me or looking at me side-eyed. And I'm like, what just happened? And the pastor said something while I was gone, and then it became a mission. Who in the church going to, get him to cut his tail off his head and bring him back to singing in the choir and, doing what we say do. And
hush him, right. And mine started when I was really young. I was a rebel really, really young, and I was challenging priests really young, and they were just like, she is going to be a problem child. And by the time I, became a teenager, I was just like, you know what, I'm cutting all this loose. And I remember, and I didn't know the rhetoric that I know now. So I remember going to God, because it's not that I abandoned God, I abandoned the religion, but I couldn't tell the difference. And it wasn't until I started allowing myself to expand outside the barriers that I allow to be put around me that I found my way back to it. Not completely, but a different kind of reverence, of God and what my true meaning. And then I also was able to find a difference between my spirituality and my religious infrastructure. So it's been a journey, and it's still somewhat hard, because even like I said, with the pendulums, the first thing that my mind went to, like, oh my goodness, no, not this. And then the other part, though, is remember, we said we were letting go of all that, structure and infrastructure, and we're going to be free. And it was like, wow. And in that moment, it was like, okay, now you've always had questions, so here's the time to ask them. Because it was always there for me, and I just could not. I thought, I'm not going to lie, sometimes I thought that maybe I was a little possessed, because certain things really hit me to the core. So I kind of went along with it because I did not understand what was happening to me. And that's one of the things that I appreciate more with, working with Joelle, is that we have forums where we can ask questions, where in Christianity, like you said, you go to your pastor and say something, and he got you looking out the side of his eye like, wait a minute, somebody go get the oil. Because something's wrong, and it's really a gift that was given that you can even use for them. But we have been so taught not to touch it.
Now, Kelly Lin Prime, I know you said you've got to head out, but did you have anything, were you religiously oppressed too in your childhood?
I would not say I was not religiously oppressed. I was very, very religiously open, which means I was very, very involved in the church. And I feel like it was a path that kept me, excuse me, I feel like it kept me out of trouble, per se. I was very involved with, like you, Joelle, I grew up in the Methodist church, and I was very involved with youth ministries and summer camps and all of that. When I was in high school, I started going to an Assembly of God, which is Pentecostal. I started going to a Pentecostal youth group. And at 16, I started speaking in tongues. So for me, I know now that was my channel opening and, spirit coming through me and my beginnings as a channel. So, at that time you only have so much context and there's only so many people you can talk to about it. It was not anything that I shared with my family because I knew that they would think it was crazy. Because it was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I say Methodists don't do that.
Exactly.
You done messed around and went in the wrong door.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, let me just say here that I don't think anyone has a problem with the spiritualism, the connection to faith and practices and understanding that which is outside of yourself, that which religious practices or belief systems bring to you. I think that it's when there becomes fear-based and judgmental-based frameworks that emerge out of the institutions of religious rather than the actual spiritual connection to God and Jesus or Buddha or whatever your faith practice connects you to. I think that's super important. So I don't want it to seem like any of us here are bashing that, but I think that the behaviors of people within the structures that have been created around religious practices is what people have had bad experiences with.
Exactly. Yes, and I definitely agree with that because, like I said, for me, I had to step out and somewhat shun Christianity in order for something to, swing me back around to it, this is where you were supposed to be. You were supposed to learn this because, I think I was reading an article where it was saying that religion is what first introduces us into the possibilities of the spirituality and our gifts. So we usually go through some track of religion. Now, whether or not it resonates with us fully is part of the journey of finding out where you fit and where your belief systems are. But my question that I wanted to ask, because I've had this thought the first time I read, I got into African religions and reading rituals and watching a couple of them and comparing them to the Pentecostal church and God in Christ and speaking in tongues and different things like that. And what I observe is a carrying on of traditions just in different names or under different labels. So, in being specific as far as the voodoo ceremony and the channeling of the gods or the spirits or the deities, the orishas, and seeing a parallel between that and what we consider the Holy Ghost that brings those speaking in tongues. And, you said something interesting when you said that was what let me know that I could channel. And I think a lot of it comes from, like you said, Joelle, it's a fear base, but when you look at the history of it, we realize this is a practice that has been going on for a long time. And again, information not being passed down to us in the correct way so we understand what's going on with us. And we understand where it's coming from, and we're not condemning ourselves or restricting our gifts out of fear.
Well, let's be very clear that many of the indigenous spiritual practices or religions, if you will, significantly predate Christianity. So this shit is not exclusive to Christianity. Somebody else was doing that before Christianity rolled around.
Right, exactly. And you can see the parallels between the ancient beliefs and what we practice. Again, it may be placed in another name or watered down a little bit, but you can see the connections to see how religion has evolved or in certain places devolved.
I have to interject here and chuckle real quick. I know you said you have to go, Carolyn, but if you hold on just a little more, one of the questions that came in through the group, and this is something that also has come up this week, there is a very strong synchronistic conversation that is happening about Native American and indigenous practices. I've had conversations with this week a person who is a shaman who learned his shaman path through an Amazonian, Indian Amazon-based practice, and he's now studying with a shaman in Colorado that also has experience down in the Mayan, the Riviera Maya.
Wow.
As you know, I've lived in Playa del Carmen and am planning a trip to Chichen Itza in the fall for the equinox. Another information I saw information this week that was referencing the white buffalo that was born in 2008 and white buffalo calf woman and her prophecies. I've had a conversation with someone about the Lakota prophecies and around the whole black snake with the Dakota Access Pipeline. And here we are in this conversation, and we're ending up talking about indigenous and eldest of teachings. So I believe that there's something important in our connections and conversation to have in that area. I think there must be something coming forth. And I believe that we are in a time of prophecy according to many of the American Native Indian teachings, that we are in the new age, or I think it's been referenced as the seventh generation, things like that. And so I would, I have a caller, I think, actually, who just clicked on to talk about this. So, Kelly, if you do have to disconnect, thank you for joining the call this evening, and I will provide your information as we close out the show in about another half hour for people who wish to contact you, okay? And stick around if you can. But, so Native American energy is definitely coming forward right now in a consistent and repetitive fashion. And another friend who is a psychic was talking about how it came up in her energy just in the last 2 weeks. 3 different people have come to her, and the word Lakota has ended up being in their conversation. So caller number with the area code 402, is this Jill? Yes. Yay. So Jill is on the line. Jill's actually part of the conversation I was having. This is my cousin from Nebraska, everyone. Yay. Jill, thanks for joining this evening. And
Hi.
Jill, would you tell our listeners what it is that you do for a living and your connection with Native American energies?
Oh, yeah, sure. I am the Indian Child Welfare Program Coordinator for the state of Nebraska. Prior to this, I was working with the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska for about 7 years as their Indian Child Welfare Act specialist. So I have had the opportunity to visit the reservations here in Nebraska specifically, but have also attended lots of conferences with the National Indian Child Welfare Association, and met many, many people from the Native American community. So is that what you're looking for, Joelle?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's say when we were talking in the car last week, I was running through certain theories and stuff, and you were like giggling, and you were like, well, yeah, that's what the Native American teaching is. That's not new. That's what they talk about in the tribe, you know, and I'm like, well, of course, the indigenous peoples were the receivers of the first knowledge as they developed an understanding of the world that they lived in. And you see it all over the world. The first peoples always had teachings about spirit, connection. They took spirit journeys. They looked at the earth, and that's uniform across all indigenous. It doesn't matter what continent that the people came from. They were talking about water and earth, brother sky, sister tree, or, you know, whatever the gender that was assigned. It was very different from a lot of the belief systems that we're dealing with now. So I don't think it's an accident that we're all starting to receive some kind of nudge from spirit that says there's something older, there's something different than what you're currently operating under, and the closer you get back to the older energies, possibly the more balanced and healthy you have an opportunity to be. That may be an assumption, but I think it's certainly telling.
I was going to say, Joelle, I think you're absolutely right. I think that, you know, I'm certainly not an expert by any means, but everything that I've learned through my years of working with the Native American population here is that there is definitely information that we can learn from the elders and from the ancestors, and the storytelling from many, many generations ago about what has happened and where we're going. I would say to your listeners that if you want to get some more information about that, look at the Viberarian Journey to Forgiveness information on YouTube. That is a great place to start as far as that goes. But it's definitely something that I think that there's an awareness for Native Americans that I don't necessarily see with other populations. And I don't know what that is, and I don't know why I say that, but I just do.
I would definitely agree on that.
I was going to say it's interesting because our panel this evening includes, 3 African Americans, 2 white women, and is that everyone? I think that's everyone on the call. So if you look at
I have some Cherokee in my family, yeah.
And so do I. Yeah, we found out a couple of years ago that, there was a connection.
Mm-hmm.
The existing paradigm has relegated women of any color as a whole gender. Certainly the vestiges of colonialism for indigenous people and, of course, the slavery that arose out of the colonialist intentions, which imbalance. I mean, there is a significant, I think, correction underway of the imbalance and injustices that have occurred I mean, I can't imagine. I know what it's like when we talk about slavery trauma, and, you know, certainly people say, oh, well, you should just get over it. Slavery was 400 years ago and all that kind of stuff. But even in Native Americans, they dwell in a day-to-day existence on a reservation. You know what I mean? That kind of reality that you now have to shrink yourself to live on a place that has been ceded to you, supposedly, but then you're kept in an oppressed economic structure, and I'm sure
generation
that the things
after
that you're
generation.
seeing, yeah. So it's like the things that you're seeing, if any.
Joelle, I was just going to say, I think that really what I am coming to learn, though, is that this whole idea about epigenetics and the historical trauma is really still there. And so for even African-American Black people that have issues right now, that is about this whole idea of about trauma, that they have intergenerational trauma that has been passed down through their DNA. And it's the same thing that Native Americans feel, and it's the same thing that Holocaust survivors feel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We are.
Well, if you look at the human, like if you say that your first energetic soul consciousness incarnated many, many lifetimes ago, and the whole idea of epigenetics is that you are your ancestor in a present evolutionary form, and your children and progeny are your biological self manifested in future form. And so the collective experience cellularly of everything that your soul journey has experienced through its evolution is contained in your DNA and in your body proper. And that's there's a lot of science now that's looking at epigenetics. That's EPIGENETICS. And then, you know, we had a show a few months back that was about the chakras, and Paula Gore, who has appeared on the show several times, spoke about how even being birthed through the root chakra energetic center of the mother, there is an energetic inheritance in addition to the cellular inheritance that you then have to move yourself through and out of as you develop yourself in your lifetime. And any clearing, healing, resolution that you can do then will be passed on genetically and emotionally to your children. You know, It's kind of heavy when you think of it, because most of us think, well, I didn't get over my childhood. But it's not just your childhood.
It's incredibly heavy when you think about it, Joelle. I mean, and you and I both know, as adopted kids, we don't know where, you know, that comes from for us. But when you talk about Native Americans and the high rate of removal and placement of those children, how many people are out there without knowing, you know, that information. Yep.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I definitely agree, you know, with the whole taking on that trauma and reliving, you know, even if we don't see it physically within our before our eyes, that in our mind's eyes and in our conscious and our subconscious, we are reliving the different traumas that we have gone through throughout our lifetime. And one of the things that the lady you were saying about, Joelle, she talked about healing childhood trauma and how we become the healing of that trauma for our parents. And for me, when I look at you know, everything comes in full circle, you know, and though we would like to undo the past, our recent past, we have to understand even 400 or 500 years ago, it's still considered our recent past, and that we were things were so much, things were different. There was a different belief system back then, and back that time. When you read Herodotus, and he talks about the ancient times, and things weren't the same. And there was more of an openness, more of a connection to nature, the first religion itself. And like you said, Joelle, these people hold the key to that information. And here in the United States, unfortunately, we have so much trauma for so many cultures, and because of different practices, it's all kind of layered on everything else. So it's, really trying to find who and what you are, what your destiny is, what your connection is. But for the Native American itself, granted, it's still terrible, but one of the things that I try to pull positive is that certain belief systems are still held, and still practiced. And there is a certain culture that is still revered. Even though that may be the only thing that they can hold on to, they're holding on to it tight. And for that, I look at them in awe, because I'm like, the strength to continue to live under these conditions, but still attempt to be active in our humanity. And I really, when we look at everything that's going on, they hold that humanity. You know what I mean? And that even the still praying. And, Joe, we talked about the people of light, and they said that it was the Aborigines were considered the people of light, and there was the ones that would pray and to keep everything moving in balance. And I've come to look at Native Americans the same way. Even when you read their histories, you see that even some of the things that we consider part of American culture or even European culture actually comes from them. So you see where the cultures have melted, and traditions have evolved within the mosaic that is America. But I guess the biggest problem is we're still dealing with human hierarchies that we don't even see just how much others have influenced us and we have influenced others, and how much of a real mosaic and how special this country truly is. When you really pay attention to the origin and the significance of this land, not just the trauma, but the greatness that we brought
I would
forth.
challenge that. I would challenge that a little bit, because there are native peoples, indigenous peoples on every continent. So,
right.
America may have its own particular trauma, but so does New Zealand and Australia, and so does Europe.
Exactly.
And there's nowhere that you can go on this planet that has not been impacted by a power imbalance that has been very harmful to the people who have been enslaved and subjugated and whatnot. What I find interesting is that we're hearing the word shaman now way more than you did like in 20 years ago. I'm meeting people all over who are practicing what they call shamanic practices. And part of me is like, okay, this is really cool, because think that there are balanced teachings that come from the path of shamanism that's interesting. And part of me says, on the other hand, I'm like, how do the Native Americans feel about all of a sudden all these, not like in America per se, non-Native Americans who are now wearing the title of shaman? And even in Africa, the word shaman, we find that it's used when we reference, tribal shamans and elders there. So it's like, part of me feels like, is it cultural appropriation? Are we doing the wrong thing? But the other part of me is like, well, no, we've all been indigenous persons if you subscribe to a theory of reincarnation.
Exactly.
So we're bringing maybe forth an energy that we're resonate from thousands and thousands of years ago is now re-emerging into our collective consciousness in present-day time. So I guess, can you culturally appropriate something that is a past life experience?
No.
No.
You can't. You can't. And that's the thing. I think that we have gotten so caught up in the rhetoric of race that, and the definition of it in a modern view instead of the old view and the correct view of race being the human race itself. You know, we are beautifully made, it says. So we know that our body will adapt to survive. And that's a lot of things that were happening. But I think we look at things we tend to look at history with a present view instead of the view it actually was. You know, we look at a time when we have, you know, millions on top of millions and millions of people. We didn't start off like that. You know what I mean? We look at it, we're spread across the globe. We didn't start off like that. You know what I mean? We started off with small clans in certain areas, and through migration and, you know, climate change, environmental disasters, whatever, you know what I mean, natural disasters, I want to say, that the landscape changed. But there was still
also colonialization. But also colonialization.
Mhm. Well, that was the last
part
about
wondering,
it. But in speaking,
go ahead. Well, I was just wondering,
speaking of an old view of, if we take off those glasses of the hardships that we have seen come through the time that we can know, that we see physically, that we know the history, you know what I mean, our present, we know that, again, we were all one. It was all one. It's always been one species. It's always been one species, and it'll always be one species.
But part of what I was going to ask is that, you know, we have to ask those who would be culturally appropriated if they feel it qualifies. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like an outsider's hubris to say, well, no, I used to be Native American back 5 lifetimes ago, so I can call myself a shaman now and feel okay with that. And I'm wondering if, Jill, you have any, like, when you're speaking with the elders and they're talking about this awakening, because from what I understand, there is conversation about this shift of energy. Is there have you heard anyone say anything about now everybody wants to be like us, or, you know, I don't know how to phrase it, but
now we're relevant, basically.
Yeah, that's a good question, Joelle, and I don't know that I can, I mean, I am really hesitant to speak for Native American people in general, or even for any specific tribe, but I really think that I think that we're looking at the here and now, and I think we're looking at who is a member of a tribe and who has cultural knowledge of that tribe now. And I that's what I would say. So if someone is trying to say that I, you know, had a past life 5 lifetimes ago or whatever, and so I feel like that I am whatever, I'm not sure I'm understanding your question correctly, but I'm not sure that would really be okay. I think that's cultural appropriation. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate the question very much, because I think I don't think that's okay.
Well, it's kind of like when even like Monica and Marcus both said, well, I have Cherokee in my blood. I have Cherokee in my family. I have a little, you know, everybody said, I have a little Indian in me, right? So genetically, that's one statement. But, you know, and of course people
very many people say, I'm Cherokee.
Right. And they don't have, like, per se, the teachings that come along culturally in present time with being Cherokee. But I think that some people, this triggers them to explore things such as shamanic healing or shamanic modalities of doing things, because they're like, well, I'll acquire knowledge from someone because this resonates with me energetically, and for whatever reason, I'm drawn to know more about shamanism. So, maybe the word appropriation is just too black and white for the nuances of spiritual things. Because, you don't have to be from India to be a Buddhist. I guess you don't have to be a Native American to be drawn to shamanism.
I think it's a respect thing that comes in.
You don't, but it is I agree, it's a respect thing. Exactly. And I think that there are ways to go about this and ways to understand. We have 567 Native American tribes that are federally recognized in the United States.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And so each one of them has their own distinct culture and their own distinct beliefs and their own distinct tribal codes and their own distinct way of living. And in addition to that, we have other tribes that are state recognized that have not been federally recognized because the federal government went into a period of terminating tribes as being federally recognized, and they have not regained federal recognition. So it's a really complex issue. Every tribe has their own culture, has their own belief system, has their own way of being, whether it's a band or clan system or those types of things. It's really very complicated.
I went and got an
It's
encyclopedia
so interesting
of Native Americans to help me understand. I took a class and I was blown away by the information. So I went and hunted down material to read, and I was, you think you know, but you really don't. And like I said, I go back to a respect thing. I think that we should be open enough to be able to explore new things, and you never know who and what you are, but there's a line of respect that we all must have when we're going into something that is not familiar to us, and it's not respect for ourselves, it's respect for that person. So
I am so excited about the conversation this evening. I will say we're down to our final 3 minutes. This has been a 2-hour conversation. We've covered A through Z, and I think we have Z through A still to cover. I think there's definitely something that is coming forward with the Native American consideration or indigenous peoples. I'm not even going to say Native American because there are indigenous peoples all over this planet that are now, we're hearing more, it's coming more to the forefront of society. There's more conversations about it. Certainly the Dakota Access Pipeline brought out a lot of communities from all over the world, indigenous and otherwise, to support the idea that water is life and a planetary resource, and that there is a problem or an imbalance possible by what was happening. This show is on every Thursday night from 9 until 10 or 11, depending on how things are going. And the episodes are going to be available on the Viberarian YouTube channel for you to listen to afterwards and download if you want to listen to work on your way to and from work. Also, the Viberarian and the Psychic Inside Show are both available on iTunes. So if you're in the Apple garden, then you can certainly find the information there. If you're in the Atlanta area this Sunday out in East Point, Georgia, to the south of downtown near the airport, is the Viberarian Elevation Station. And this is a gathering of holistic vendors and service providers, as well as psychic readers and intuitives who provide services. It will be from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Cupcakery in East Point, Georgia. And you can find out more information about this on the Viberarian webpage, or the Viberarian Facebook community, excuse me. Also, next Tuesday on the Psychic Inside Show, my special guest is Nancy Byrne, and she is a psychic intuitive and course instructor, and she's written a book called Choices. And so I'll be interviewing her about her life of discovering her gifts and abilities. So I want to thank Marcus, clairvoyant Marcus Howell, who's been on the show this evening. You can find him on his Facebook page if you're interested in having services with him. Marcus, thank you so much for this evening. Then I also have Monica, who was on the phone at the conversation, and Monica will also be at the Elevation Station helping with the flow of things on Sunday, and I always appreciate the conversations that we have on air and off the air. And my cousin Jill, thank you so much for calling in this evening with your contributions, and we will definitely be fine-tuning and coming back on to talk about some things, and maybe we'll be able to explore some of the oldest practices of spiritualism. We'll be able to look at epigenetics and things like that. It's always an interesting ride on this show, and I just am grateful for the opportunity to kind of enjoy myself in public forum because this just really excites me. So, Marcus, Monica, Jill, thank you so much this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I wish you all the blessings that you can hold this week and that your life is filled with love and light. Namaste.
Namaste.
Mad love and positive energy.